What if we could unlock the wisdom and aspiration to life's opportunities and challenges with a conversation? Hello, I'm Chief Efi Bell, your guide and host, and welcome to Uncommon Conversations. Today, in honor of Black History Month, we're talking to Black thought leaders from around the globe. This series is called Black Legacy Architects Uncommon Conversations of Wisdom and Aspiration. We're going to dive into the essence of legacy and explore the metaphor of the legs of legacy standing on the shoulders of giants, embodying this tension between leveraging our rich heritage and forging a future path for our collective legacy between generations. I want to welcome our guests today, who each of them embodies two critical roles in this process. They are either the legs of legacy, or which means they are actively shaping the present and future, or they are the shoulders of giants of which the legs stand upon. For those who have paved the way, especially women who have contributed significantly. Perhaps they are both at the same moment, but we will begin to think through that as we think about how do we foster a thriving ecosystem of Black legacy across the globe. A warm welcome to each of our guests embodying this journey with us. I'm thrilled to have you in the conversation today. So let's jump into our first question. So to kick off our conversation, please introduce yourself with your name, city, age. What are you passionate about? And a quote that speaks to you for your view of Black legacy. And who would like to go first?
Well, I'll go first. My name is John Bell. I'm based in Cincinnati, Ohio. I am 70 years old. My favorite ice cream flavor can no longer be secured because it was my auntie's homemade peach ice cream. I am passionate about the growth and development of the next generation. And if I had a quote that captures my perspective, I would say that it's something I learned in West Africa, and that is to always give honor to our ancestors, live life to the blessing of the unborn. For the three, the ancestors, the living, and the unborn are one.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Alora Miller. I currently live in Wiesbaden, Germany, but I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio. My favorite ice cream flavor is salted caramel. Something I'm passionate about is food and helping others. And that I is something I learned in the military, which is discipline beats motivation.
All right. Well, welcome to both of you, and thank you for those insightful introductions. I'm excited about our conversation. There's going to be a whole lot of experience and perspective here today. So let's pivot to our first question, our first major question that we want to explore around the personal communal aspect of legacy. So as a child and even as a young adult, as a child, I can remember my grandmother sharing stories about the sacrifices that she made for future generations. And so over the years, I have mused over this gift of sacrifice that they made and designed this metaphor around that, around the legs of legacy standing on the shoulders of giants. As we reflect on that at this moment, do you see yourself as the legs of legacy or a giant or both, and why?
I would view myself as the legs of legacy at this point in my life, because I recognize that there are people who have come before me who have made me and molded me into the person that I am today so that I can be able to do the things that I do and the things that I'm passionate about. And with that being said, I also realize that one day I will be one of the giants that gets to be able to stand next to the giants who I stood up on, to get where I am today.
Thank you.
Well, I see myself as both. My ancestors embedded in me the importance of family and that I should place them first in my life. To work to make God, my race, and my family proud. My mission is to record the important history they provided. central to their history has been the importance of the relationship we have with each other, more so than the relationship with other peoples. In the heat of Jim Crow, they built schools for their children, for the children of their community. They taught in that school to their children. And they supported each other in that community. The important thing was not how others treated us, but how we treated each other. In my mind, that made them giants. In terms of being the legs, I left corporate America and started a business. One of the great drivers of that decision was to ensure that my children had the opportunity to be exposed to leadership experiences and to learn some things that I had learned in corporate America. I wanted them to know that the force of their will would make room for them at the table and to accept no barriers and no excuses.
Yeah, that's a powerful thought. And I'm really excited to be here in this multi-generational conversation with both my dad and my daughter. It's really exciting to think about Black legacy through this lens and our contributions. And so when you think about it's Black History Month, and part of this series is in honor of Black History Month, but it's about going beyond just, typically Black History Month is in celebration of African Americans in the United States. But I do believe it's important that we have a global conversation with Black voices, because without our ancestors and without that heritage, how can we have a full conversation about Black History Month, and particularly the voices and contributions of Black women? And so, we oftentimes think about our family when we think about Black women and the historical contributions that they have made in our lives and those pivotal roles. But as we're celebrating Black voices this month, especially for Black women, how have they played a pivotal role in legacy building, and how have their contributions influenced your journey?
I gotta go first.
Sure.
I don't want to go first.
Okay.
Could you repeat that question? Could you repeat that question?
Mhm. Yeah. In celebrating Black history, Black voices this month, especially Black women, how have they played a pivotal role in legacy building in your life? And what have been their contributions or influences to your journey?
Yeah, you don't want to go first, Miss Lolo? Yeah. I've been surrounded by very powerful Black women, and it's so overwhelming, because one thing that was consistent with all of those women around me as I grew up was the idea that the only barrier that might be to one's freedom is one's knowledge. So they were strong believers in education. They were strong believers in saving. And so that's had a powerful effect on me.
Alora, as a maybe third or fourth generation person in the military in our family and extended family, what have been those contributions and those pivotal roles? And it doesn't have to just be around military, but just in general, what have been those contributions or influences of Black women on their role in legacy building in your life?
As my grandpa said, I've been surrounded by a lot of powerful Black women growing up. And one thing that I've learned from all of them that have been in my life, immediate family or just mentors, or any of the Black women that I've come across, is that they've always been very strong, which is kind of a stereotype, I guess you could say, for Black women. But they have taught me that watching them has taught me that I can do hard things and that nothing is out of my reach as long as I'm willing to put in the work and effort to get it. So even though there is extended family that is military, in my immediate family, there's not anybody in my immediate family who was military. So it was a very hard decision for me to make because it was out of the norm. Most of my cousins and aunts and people who immediately came before me were, going to college, and they just took a different route from what I did. So it was a very hard decision for me to make, going into deciding to join the military. But without having that basis of knowledge that I've learned and watched and experienced from the Black women who surround me, I wouldn't have been able to do that. And for that, I'm grateful.
Do you think so, as you think about Black women being the giants that you're kind of recognizing, do you think those giants are aware that you see them as giants in their life, in your life? And if they're not around anymore, for those who are alive, do you feel like they would know that they're a giant in your life?
I'm not sure, and I think that maybe that I should do a better job, and not just me, but people in this generation or in life in general should do a better job of giving people their flowers while they're still here, and just showing your appreciation towards the people who came before you and letting them know, like, hey, because of you, I am this. And I think I have had not a hard time, but I could do better at letting the people who influenced me, thanking them for that influence.
My response to that would be, I don't think, and maybe this is part of my deficiency in interpersonal skills, but I don't think that mattered to them. I think they were out to plow the field and to create a future path for the upcoming generation and the unborn. And they were so passionate about doing that they didn't stop to do assessments as to whether they were giants or not giants. They just knew that they were in the war, they were in the battle, and they needed to do their best to win that battle. And so I think that's kind of what I think of. And so I don't know if they knew or didn't know, or if they know and don't, or et cetera. Okay, I don't know.
Yeah,
probably not.
Yeah, it's an interesting perspective, when you just put your head down and just do it, right? Because that's what needs to be done. But when you think about this concept, right, of standing on the shoulders of giants, I kind of envision this literal concept, right, where you see these feet, right? And as you're a giant, having feet right here, so close to your face, you can imagine all this dirt is kicking up as they're navigating this new legacy, this new creation, these things they've taken in and how they're reshaping them in this innovative way. And so, the giants are looking up like, hey, your feet are right here and you're kicking dirt in my face, and you're going somewhere I couldn't go. But at the same time, I'm glad to be standing here. But could you, and then the legs are maybe like, oh, forgot you were down there, kind of thing. And so I think it's a parallel because perhaps there are some layers to the ladder or this bridge that takes us over or through the generations, that we're no longer hearing their literal voice, but we're hearing their legacy voice. And so it takes me into what I want to call the uncommon part of our conversation and how we navigate the complexities of this evolving legacy landscape, right? So one of the things that I'm noticing, and I think others are noticing, is this: we're witnessing this creation of new platforms, so to speak, right? These new voices are emerging within our community, and it's fantastic and great, and it's important. But then there's this aspect of we have so many tables, right? every, and not just younger people, because it's not about age, but you're seeing all these new groups and all these new facets and all these new components and elements. And some people are even naming it the new table, right? So this bridge between generations is always going to have this degree of tension, but are we seeing a strain, one that could result in a fracture and a break that could be detrimental to us when we think about legacy? And so, how do you view this increasing diversity of platforms, and how do we simultaneously transition some of those legs into becoming giants? So we'll start with that first one. Just how do you view this new dynamic of a multitude of new tables, all these new groups and formations and things, and how is that affecting us developing and continuing building as Black legacy?
Well, as for me, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Lola. Go
I'm
ahead,
not
Miss-
sure I understand the question. What do you mean by new tables?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of new groups, right, that are emerging. If we just think about some of the longstanding organizations, we could name NAACP, Urban League, and these other ones, right? But then we're seeing this emergence of groups or organizations or communities that are outside of that, right? And so, for example, I saw one that was called the New Black Table, and I was kind of like, what does that mean, right? Or we're seeing like even just even in when you listen in social media and some of the narrative conversation of younger people, where they're like, oh, we're creating all this new stuff because it doesn't exist, or we need this because it doesn't exist. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
But
It
how
makes sense. It makes sense, but I think it's irrelevant, uh, personally. Okay. I think in this current society, there's a massive amount of distraction, and it's easy to get lost in the distraction. For me, the simple focus is this: family. Because if you're not in strengthening and empowering the individuals that God blessed you with, all those other tables in my worldview become irrelevant. So I guess that's the work of someone else. Okay. But if I were to say I had a great concern, the great concern is that the family doesn't seem to be as strong as it once was. And maybe that's because of all of those distractions. So as an elder statesman in my particular family, I discard those tables, and I just want to know that I'm doing what I can to encourage my grandchildren to find their level in life, to seek out their greatness, to encourage that same thing within my children, and to try and support that endeavor, because they're the ones who are going to make the next leg of this journey possible. And that's important to me, because there was a time where in my consciousness, my children weren't born, but I had names for them. And without them being born, my grandchildren weren't born. Well, now my children and my grandchildren, for the most part, are born. So the unborn are inside of them. And that means I need to do my best to strengthen their abilities to be flexible and to be able to cope with whatever they confront in their journey. And so, again, trying to make sure that they catch the understanding that there are no barriers to their greatness, and they need to avoid making excuses for anything. Just continue to plow the fields as your ancestors plowed, and you will make progress towards some greater destination.
Yes,
So I don't think those tables matter.
so how do you turn down those distractions? How do you combat those distractions?
By focusing on what's in front of you. That you deem to be important is in front of you. So that's I have an easy way to do it. So that question may be better provided to someone who is not as singularly focused on how to make a contribution to the future.
Yeah. Laura, what do you think about what was just shared being one of those unborn, now born, and grandchildren of that concept?
Um, I don't know. I kind of feel like it's a lot of pressure. Um,
That's right.
but I think even though it is a lot of pressure, I think that anything that is worth having is all usually hard to obtain. And just because it is hard doesn't mean it's impossible. And I feel like because of the people who came before me and because of exactly what Grandpa said, I am sure that I will have the tools to do what it is and carry on the legacy of our family well.
Yeah. I don't know that there's much more to be said on that piece. Um, so then when you think about, your reflections around where we're going next, what is it that comes to mind? How do we get to this next bridge? Um, how do we celebrate? No, I'm sorry. I want to ask a different question. So when you think about individuals who potentially have not shifted, right? So I think there's a time and a place where, as the legs of legacy, you have to make a shift to think more in the mindset of a giant. Dad, I heard you saying it when you were saying perhaps that's something for another generation to figure out. Which to me tells me that that's the shift, right? Of that's not my work, it's another person's work, per se. How do we get people to recognize the timeliness of that transition? I want to start with Alora, and thinking about, when people aren't moving um, into becoming foundational aspects within the legacy building, and they're still taking up space in that other realm. How do we get them to shift, and why is it important for them to shift in a timely manner?
I don't know.
Do you witness people not shifting in a timely manner? Have you been a witness to that
In any aspect or in this specific situation?
in any aspect?
Yeah, all the time.
Mm. What's the effect of that,
Um,
or what's the
you
impact?
it's I feel like once you have missed your mark, it's very easy to miss your mark. And once you have missed it, you get complacent and it's very easy to stay stagnant and stay in one place. And sometimes you don't realize that you have become stagnant and that you're complacent until it's too late. And you look back and you realize you've been sitting in the same place for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And I think maybe that's when some people realize and wake up to reality.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. I think your question now kind of shifts to the question of the architect.
Mhm.
What is this thing that is being designed, and whose work is it? So clearly, the person who lays the cornerstone establishes the central principles of what that building or architecture is going to be. It founds the foundation. But there's a time where the roofers come along, where the plumbers come along, where the electricians come along, and without their support, then the building is never complete. But none of them are strategic prior, other than in the design. None of the actual workers are strategic until the cornerstone is laid, until other aspects of the building has been complete. And so I think one of the greatest dangers in the African American community in particular may be a diminishing appreciation of acquiring skills and knowledge through whatever venue that is, whether it's the military, whether it's college, or whatever that may be. The acquiring of skills and knowledge. When I was going to school in West Africa, it was a very intriguing observation I thought I saw. And that was that the majority of the Africans enrolled at the university were in the kinds of disciplines that were important to building a nation. They were in medicine, they were in engineering, all kinds of things that any nation is going to need to progress. When I returned, what I realized is most African Americans were into social science, which meant they weren't building the skills to build a nation. They were building the skills to work in a nation. Okay. And I'm concerned, number one, that we kind of have missed that architecture of knowing how to build, how to engineer, how to create architecture. And we've moved into heavily into the social administrative sciences, but we may not even be progressing in that area. And so that means that there's a serious red flag. And how do we alter that? I don't know. Again, I think at the national and state leadership level, you about have to discard all the rhetoric that comes from them because they'll keep us in the social sciences. And you got to do that at the family level. So I'm pleased to see that when I look across the spectrum of grandchildren and grandnieces, that I'm seeing the development of doctors, engineers, and scientists populate in our family. I'm pleased with that. So I think the future's in good hands.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And we have to have a warrior. We have to have a warrior.
Yes, we need a warrior. Thank you, Alora, for stepping forward to be our warrior.
The leadership and strategic planning is essential to the architect.
Yeah, but defending that architect is important.
Oh. So that's my comment to the best I'm able.
Alora, what are your thoughts?
I don't really have any thoughts on that.
Okay, that's fair. You know, the beauty of an uncommon conversation is that we're not having the same dialogue we're used to hearing. And a lot of times it will leave undone, right? That's the messy work, is getting in here, but not expecting that everything is complete because it's a continuum of conversations, and stoking that fire of dialoguing with other people, to muse over that concept and to muse over the things that we've discussed. So considering that it's Black History Month, how do you balance honoring those established legacies with the need for evolution? I'm going to start with Alora.
I'm going to go back to the question you asked before about the new tables. And I'm going to disagree with Grandpa and say that it is important to have those new tables because as the Black community, any group of or dynamic of people is constantly going through evolution. And with that comes, there needs to be new spaces and new opportunities for whatever evolution that is. And what's common within the Black community is there seems to be a very small box of what Black people can be and what Black people can do. And because there's no new spaces or environments for people who don't fit in these check boxes to go to. So I think it's very important to have those opportunities and new places for there to be a growth. But with that being said, there wouldn't be any of these new places if we don't appreciate the establishments that have been in place before them, such as the ones you named earlier, like NAACP and so on and so forth. So I think even creating the new tables, as you would say, is the appreciation for the ones we've established before.
But if we take this concept and try to string them together, it's, you know, if a house is to support a family and it's a family of 5, but now the family has grown, right? When we think multi-generational, instead of thinking of that individualistic one house, one family, how do we think about it more like a compound where we have multiple families as the family extends, but we stay connected through this compound, kind of idea. So, yes, we need the innovation and as you said, those new tables become that, but those sound like almost like extensions of the house or the next iteration of expanding the house. How do we, instead of making it a separate house, how do we weave them together to be more tight fit?
Um, I think that's not a question that has a simple answer. Um, I think in order for that to happen, the mindsets of people who have come before you would have to be more open-minded to the ideas and the new generations out views on life and views on our issues in the Black communities today. I think that is the reason why it's such a large separation in the Black community, because the older, not all, but most of the older generation, obviously they have a different mindset than someone like me or somebody in the generation after me will have. And I think that's where the divide is. So I'm not sure how to answer that question. I don't think there's a simple answer at this time, but I think it will have to depend on um, the mindset of everyone involved.
Yeah. I think she just called me old, y'all, but that's okay. Dad.
I don't think there's any disagreement on that. I think that's exactly what I can relate to my grandparents telling me go and be somebody, but they didn't tell me what to be. They didn't tell me how I should think about the world that I would evolve in. I think they had the confidence that if I was anchored with certain values, I would figure out how to navigate those new parts of the stream. And I think that's just as true today. So these so-called new tables and the so-called old tables, I think the generation that's coming through will figure out how to lead and navigate through that and get prepared for the unborn generation to take it from there. So I don't find that to be in conflict. However, I think part of the conflict is the paradigms that we wear. So we begin to think about certain things in certain ways because we are constantly bombarded with certain statements, okay, with certain statements. So I wouldn't want to take anything away from institutions like the NAACP, but it's possible that they've received too much credit for certain things by the same token. And one of my grandmother's sisters challenged me one day to ask, in the early to mid 70s, what was truly different for the majority of African Americans in the mid 70s versus the end of Reconstruction? Now, that was a powerful question. And a lot of things had gone on between the 16-year period of Reconstruction after the Civil War in 1976. But fundamentally, her point of view was nothing had changed for the majority of African Americans. So take all of the activity that had occurred in that almost 100 years. And her point was that fundamentally, most African Americans were experiencing the same dilemmas. And so I don't know about those prior architects or today's tables, but I understood her mission. And in that old lady's mind, her mission was not integration. Her mission was freedom and freedom for the people. So in her mind, we had done all this gyration, but had not improved the idea of freedom amongst our people. And so I think as the next generation goes forward, they've got to understand what is a paradigm Where are those filters coming from? And do we need to make adjustments to have better sight? And so for me, that means they all need to have greater exposure to all different kinds of ways of thinking, all different kinds of people across the globe, because this particular society has done a lot of compression on the point of view and the experience of the African American. I could tell you this in my notes, because it's a little different. There was this question about which women had been influential as part of legacy. And I had three. Now, the third of the three, so not the one that I put at the very top, was Winnie Mandela. Why? Because I think most African Americans would not perceive experiences going on in Africa as part of Black history. That is a paradigm, okay? That is a paradigm that requires, in my worldview, a paradigm shift. That Africa is Black history, just like it is in the Caribbean, in the Bahamas, in Cuba, in Brazil. But we tend to have our views limited to what's going on in the 50 continental states of the United States of America.
Yeah, very true. And even flipping that over, right? Some of our guests that have joined us, were a couple of them were Ghanaian, and just in some of those conversations, getting that like it's almost the mirrored version of what do people in general in the continent think about Black history when you go forward, right? Or you go just not forward in time, but just when you move vertically across a map. And how do they see, um, I'm trying to think of a person, Marcus Garvey, for example, or those kinds of things, and that construct of history. So that's interesting concept. Laura, any thoughts on that? Almost called you your nickname. Sorry.
No, I don't have any thoughts on that.
Okay. So, as you think about this conversation and muse over what you've heard today, what is something you're taking away from this conversation that you want to take forward?
I guess I'll go first. After having this conversation, it made me realize that I need to do a better job at, like I said earlier, giving people their flowers while they're still here, and being appreciative of the journey of others who have come before me and how it has influenced my life, and showing my appreciation for those individuals and their journey.
Thank you.
I think the thing I take away, and I think is important, is the idea of trying to anticipate the rivers and build a bridge before the next generation gets there. So that it could be somewhat of a step that I missed, but clearly, as the young ones in our family, like Lolo, as she ventures on her next journey, there should be certain bridges that I can see she's going to need to be able to cross that perhaps she can't anticipate. And I think it's my job to get busy building that bridge so that when she gets there, the bridge is ready. And that's all she knows, that her journey can continue, because it's on her to be carrying the next leg. And it's probably on me to try and reduce whatever barriers I can anticipate she might confront. So that's my takeaway. So while she's giving flowers, I want to be building bridges.
Okay.
That'll be good collective work.
Mm-hmm. So your reflections and experiences that you shared today provide a lot to ponder on, right? This ongoing journey of legacy building, and especially Black legacy building. I'm reminded of the strength, the resilience, the challenge, the dilemma And as you said, Dad, the paradigm shift that defines our collective journey. And so thank you to being an incredible panel today of Black legacy architects for sharing your wisdom, your experiences and aspirations with us today. Your voices are instrumental in shaping this future. And to our audience, thank you for joining us in this uncommon conversation. We hope that you found it inspirational and insightful, and it resonates with you on your own journey, as we all have the capacity to contribute as architects in this legacy building. It's my pleasure to be a guide in this discussion. Stay inspired, stay connected, and keep building a legacy that future generations will proudly stand upon. Until next time, I leave you with this question, or this uncommon question. The future is calling. What must you say no to today in order to say yes to that future? Have a good one.